Hey everybody, I'm EAS Certified Master Beekeeper David Burns. Good to be with you today. Got an exciting video for you today. Coming up today, I'm going to help you get your bees through the winter by showing you how to control your mites and prepare your bees for winter, being mite free. I'm going to show you the importance of not only feeding your bees in the fall, but also what to feed them and when to feed them. And I'm also going to talk to you about wrapping your hive up to endure a tough winter. Those things are coming up. Stay tuned. Let's get started. I've spent a quarter of a century of my life figuring out honeybees, studying them and doing research on bees, studying research, doing my own experimentation. And over that 25 years of studying bees, one of the frustrating factors was not getting bees through the winter and trying to figure out why are bees dying in the winter and what can I do to allow that not to happen. Let's face it, you put a lot of time and energy and money into beekeeping, and you worked hard all summer long to get your bees healthy, making sure they're queened right, making sure that hopefully they're making honey for you. And now you're facing winter. And depending on where you live in the country, whether you live in the far north where winters are just absolutely brutal, whether you live where I'm at in central Illinois, winters are hard, or even the southern states where you still have some winter. You need to make sure that your bees are able to cluster, stay healthy, and be healthy bees when spring arrives. Otherwise, you've lost your investment of money, you've lost your investment of time, and maybe, and most unfortunately, maybe you lost your passion to continue keeping bees. We don't want that to happen. So today I'm going to talk to you and get into some specifics on what I have personally found that works for me. And I'm going to share that with you today. Now, as I share these things with you, I'm going to demonstrate them. We're going to walk through it together. I want to challenge you to also take one of my winter courses where I go into great detail and specific information that will help you even more. I'm going to give you enough information today just for time that will make it happen for you. But I know some of you want to know more information. You want to just get into the details, and so you can certainly take my winter class. Probably the top reasons bees are dying in the winter, from viruses that are vectored or spread by the varroa mite, and by starving. And there's no reason for that. Beekeepers are making mistakes of feeding their bees only sugar water or candy in the winter, and that's not enough. Bees are like humans. They need protein, they need vitamins, they need minerals, just like we do, to maintain a healthy body. And so today, let's get started. I want to show you what I do. The noise you hear in the background is probably crickets. Fall brings a lot of crickets around the beehives and in your house and everywhere. So what I've got to demonstrate to you today is basically what I think it's important to feed your bees in the fall. And that is, I believe in using Honey Bee Healthy for adding this to your one-to-one sugar water that we feed in the fall. And then I also think it's important to add Amino Bee Booster. This has 20 amino acids that are vital for bee health. And I really believe in Amino Bee Booster. Amino acid is a form of protein. It is protein, so we need that. And so I've poured from my kitchen sink very hot water just from the tap into these two jars. And I've filled these jars approximately halfway. Doesn't have to be exact, but this is about halfway. And then I have protein powder that we sell. Now this protein powder is for bees. It's not a protein powder that you buy, for yourself. So it's for bees, and I add about that much, which is approximately a tablespoon. Doesn't really matter a whole lot as long as we get some protein powder in this. It's going to be fine. But this is a key ingredient, I believe, in my success in getting bees through the winter, is by feeding them appropriate nutritional sugar water during the fall so they can build up bees of winter physiology. So by feeding bees this time of the year, I can actually stimulate my queen to lay brood. And so like if she lays brood in the next few weeks, let's say in October, then she'll be able, that brood will emerge in November, and bees of winter physiology that's raised in October will live 4 to 6 months, which puts them into April and May. And the bees that live through the winter are making the heat to get the hive through the winter. So the bees we see now in September will be a leftover of summer bees that will not live more than 40 days. And so it's important that we have bees of winter physiology. So by adding this sugar now, I'm just going to dissolve it into the hot water, and then we're going to add in our Honeybee Healthy and our Amino Bee Booster, and that's critical as well. So for example, okay, so the Amino Bee Booster, I add just about half of a capsule, or the top, like that, just enough like that, and that's about all that I need to give the bees what they need there. And then on the Honeybee Healthy, this is probably a very important ingredient because it is a food feeding stimulant for bees. And so again, I'm not adding a lot at all. I just need the scent of the Honeybee Healthy. So I'll add about that much. Same here. And that will make it smell good and attract the bees to it. Now I continue to stir it, mixing it all together. And that's the key. You got to really stir it. Some people ask me, should I boil it? Is it important to boil it? Get the water boiling hot and then add the sugar? I don't think so. You can dissolve this sugar simply by stirring it in very hot tap water. The reason that we're doing this whole mixture is that we can stimulate the bees to raise their brood. So the queen is going to be able to lay more eggs with this kind of mixture because the bees feel that they have the same things that they have in spring. When they're visiting flowers in the spring, they're bringing in a lot of protein through their pollen, and so they feel they have the go-ahead to produce a lot of spring brood. Well, by feeding them this same solution, they're going to have a stimulation of raising brood, and that's what we want. We want them to raise a lot of brood in late September, October, so those bees will be bees of winter physiology. Now, those bees of winter physiology will not really live long if they've been parasitized by the mite. And so it's important that first you get your mite levels down, and then feed like crazy to build up the brood. By building up bees of winter physiology, we're actually producing heaters. All those bees in the wintertime will live long and make heat. No matter how cold it gets in the cluster, they can stay warm. All right, look at that. Doesn't that look delicious and perfect to feed bees? Let me show you now how important it is and how you feed bees in the fall. So what we're going to do next is put on this feeding system that I invented called the Burns Bees feeding system. This feeding system has 2 holes for the jars that we just mixed to go into. And when I originally made it, I originally made this rectangular space so that we can push pollen patties down through the screen so the bees can eat on it. Now this is a dirty one because I use it in my hives and it's pretty dirty, but it's got a lot of propolis and wax on it. But these jars fit through this screen on the top, and I'll show you in just a minute. And then the bees go up, this cluster of bees will go up and drink from these jars and this pollen. Now, today, since we're mixing our pollen into the sugar water, it's a better way to get this protein, amino acids, vitamin, and minerals into the bees than to trust that it will work through a pollen patty. A pollen patty is a protein patty, mostly sugar, but it also has protein. And we used to think that this was a good alternative to feed bees. But think about it. Everything bees eat, they consume through a straw, their proboscis, when they go to a flower. Some of the pollen grains make it into the nectar and into their honey tank, and the proventricular valve actually, pulls it into the second gut where they absorb it into the walls of the gut for nutrition. So everything that the bee eats are eating through a straw. Why not do for the bees what nature does? Nature allows this pollen to get into the nectar and bees consume it through their proboscis. So why don't we do that? That's what I came up with the idea. Just put the protein into the sugar water, into the nectar that bees are consuming naturally, put it in the sugar water. That way when they consume it, they have an easier access for that protein to be in their diet than having to come over here and chew up patties and get it that way. Sure, they'll do it, and we still make these like this for those of you that want to use patties, but again, the protein in the sugar water is the ticket. It is money. That dog will hunt all day long. Now, if you don't use a pollen patty and you're using this in the fall, I recommend leaving this open and allowing some ventilation in the hive. Certainly, we're not going to leave this on in the winter. So fall is in Illinois, in the north, it's dry. Sometimes it can be hot in the fall. So this is just a way for them to have extra ventilation. So let me show you now how we put this on and how to use it. Before we get into this hive and feed it, I actually am so proud of a training video that I put together on controlling your mites. Very extensive on oxalic acid, formic acid, how to test for mites, how to count mites, calculate it out, and of course other natural methods that I recommend, like a green drone comb, powdered sugar treatment, screen bottom board, breaking the queen's brood cycle. It's all in this training video. And this was the hive we actually did one of the scenes early in the morning on using oxalic acid on. So certainly check out my website if you're at a loss on how to control mites, and that will go into much more detail. But this hive today, we're going to actually start feeding it. And so I want to show you the feeding system that I designed and used and how effective it is on feeding your bees. Please note that you cannot feed your bees with an entrance feeder in the fall, because if you do, it will induce robbing. So in order to start feeding the bees, it's early in the morning. All the bees are home. That's why I've put on my bee suit. Since I'm not actually going to be lifting out any frames, I've chosen not to light a smoker and just endure the bees kind of being flighty when I pop this open. Also, you'll notice that I'm actually leaving on this super. I've already taken off, extracted this super maybe once or twice, I can't remember. And so I've gotten a lot of honey out of this. And so I don't want to be greedy. I'm going to go ahead and let them have this super that they've worked on refilling. So what we do next is we put this feeding system right here on top. And the proper way to place it on this hive is for the rails. There's actually, if you can see, there's rails right here, and they go down to the hive because we're allowing space for the bees above the frames to walk and reach the sugar water that we're placing on. Now push it down pretty good. We don't want any small hive beetles or robber bees to be able to make it into the feeding area. So we just push it down, make sure there's nothing holding it up. So as you can see already, now our bees are under control. And what I mean by our bees are under control, I mean that they are now below this screened area. And so I can feel heat. And so the bees aren't flying up. Now I got my sugar water ready. We've mixed it up and it looks good. Just place it right there for the bees to enjoy. That's one jar there. And the holes are working good in the second jar here. The way this works is that the sugar water is actually sort of in a vacuum lock based on the fluid and the little hose at the bottom. There's not much air here, so the fluid can't run out. It just kind of bubbles on the holes in the lid. And by the way, our feeding systems come with those lids with the holes in it. All you have to provide is the jar. Now, if you don't have an extra box to put on here, because we don't want to leave it like this in the weather, we have to put a shell around it. If you use a pint jar or smaller, you can actually use your honey super box to go here. Or if you have extra equipment like I do, certainly you put a deep on here, and now you can put large jars down in here, and they can stand up higher like that. Again, what's nice about this is that we're feeding bees on top. So if there's no robbing, because the other robber bees don't have access, we're going to put a top cover on this, and it seals nicely. And when we have to change these jars, we just simply take them off, and the bees are below that screen. They eat the sugar water through the screen. And so this allows us to not have to worry about actually any of the bees getting out when we're changing these jars. And then once the food is in place, we just simply put the top on. And I do recommend that you place a block, something heavy, on top of this hive. So now that we're feeding this hive, I recommend that you continue to feed them. Give them refills on this jar, mix it the same way. Feed them until the daytime temperatures are not getting above 50 degrees Fahrenheit as a high temperature. So once it starts getting cooler, where it's not warm anymore during the daytime and bees aren't flying, it's recommended that then you shift over from the feeding system here that we're looking at to the candy boards, the winter bee kinds. Temperatures where the bees are clustered, that's usually 50 degrees or below. Now we want to feed them hard candy. Let me demonstrate our winter bee kind. Okay, so this is the winter bee kind that I invented, and I want to show you how to put it on your hive, how to use it. I wait until the temperatures are below 50 degrees where bees are clustered, and once they're clustered, they're no longer going to be able to eat their sugar water that we just looked at. And so what I've done here is actually put insulation on the top part of the winter bee kind, and then we mix our ingredients here, which are similar to what we found in the sugar water. We have vitamins, minerals, vitamin B, amino boosters, and we have the protein. It's all together mixed with the sugar and sugar water, and then it's boiled or cooked to a certain temperature and then poured into the board. Now it's very pliable that the bees can easily eat, plus the moisture of the colony actually rises into and it gets absorbed into this candy. Two things go on there. Number one, we're getting rid of excess moisture in the hive that can really cause the bees to hypothermally, get too cold in the wintertime. That moisture is absorbed and used to help them eat this candy. So we're getting rid of the moisture. And then secondly, what's going on is the bees are actually able to consume this sugar better when the moisture is being absorbed into this board. Now, this board, when we ship it out to you, actually comes with a recipe on how to mix it and how to prepare it for a refill. If you want to refill this, then the recipe is here. Some of our customers actually send the board back in and we refill them here for them for a small fee, but certainly you can try that yourself. Let me show you now how to use it when you're done feeding the liquid Burns feeding system in the fall, and now you're going into winter. Let me show you how to put these on. I usually put these on just a week before Christmas, and sometimes I don't put them on until maybe January. So don't get in a real big hurry feed them liquid sugar with protein and amino bee booster as long as you can to build up the bees with winter physiology. This is a winter feeding system, so we want to put this on when bees are no longer flying, because it does have an entrance here, and robber bees could go in the entrance if you put it on too early when bees are hungry in the fall looking for food. We have so many customers that are ordering these now, and the winter bee kinds will be shipped starting in November sometime. If the weather is cool, we have to ship it in cooler weather or it may melt, but they're bagged nicely. There's always some dripping of sugar inside the bag. Don't worry about that. And so when you receive these in November or December, you have plenty of time to get them on the hive. It's not bad to open a hive up in cooler weather. If it's no matter what the temperature is, I'll open my hive up and change these out as long as I'm not pulling any frames out. It doesn't hurt the bees at all. Again, I'm not going to use any smoke because I just want to demonstrate. I'm not going to be lifting out any frames, so we're just going to take the top off, and then I'll demonstrate how the winter bee kind goes on a hive. So what you want to do is place this winter bee kind board with the candy. This is the candy side here. This is the insulation. This is the vent. I want to place it on the hive like this with the candy down. And then once it's in place like that, you place your top cover back on the hive. So the top cover just goes on just like this. And again, you may want to put a block on top of the top cover. And so by putting this on, what we're doing is leaving this gap right here, as you can see, and this hole here is for ventilation, and the bees will use it in the wintertime no matter how cold, because the cluster goes up here and starts eating the candy, and they'll use this to take their cleansing flights and go back in. Now I want to show you how I wrap my hive. Okay, so the first thing we want to do in preparing to wrap our hive is block off the entrance, because now the bees are going to actually be using the entrance on top of the winter bee kind instead of the lower entrance. So use an entrance reducer like this. And then what I've found best to wrap the hive is bat insulation. So you can see over here the bat insulation that I'm ready to wrap around the hive. And then what I'm going to do now is point out that my hives are actually about 12 inches off the ground. I'm going to use a screen bottom board all winter, and then it's going to allow some ventilation because I've got my hole at the top and the screen bottom board, and that's what the bees need. Although there's not going to be any wind blowing up because I'm going to wrap it, as you'll see, all the way to the ground. And you're going to use some Gorilla Tape. It's really good to get the good name brand Gorilla Tape to tape this together. You can use staples as well, but taping it is a good thing. So what we'll do is actually start, and the bees kind of get a little confused, but start it on the bottom, usually in the back of the hive, and I'll put it halfway, about right there, where I can get some leverage from this piece of tape. There's Mr. Cricket. And then just tape it about right there. That'll hold it in place while we just kind of walk around the hive with it. And then once you get it where you want it, then you just use another piece of tape to tape it in position, and these are just to hold it in position while you get some better tape and tape it all the way around it. So the best way to tape it, as you can see, I've used this over and over through the years, but it's best just to run the tape all the way around 2 or 3 times to hold it that way. Now let me show you about the entrance hole and how important it is to leave that open. So I usually leave this below, and I'll put a staple right here, and that way the bees can go in and out of their hole during the winter, and they don't use the bottom at all. Since I blocked it off at the bottom, I don't have to worry about mice, and it allows me just to wrap up my hive for winter. So this is a little mating nook that I use, and I want to show you today what I do in order to break the queen's brood cycle, because this will reduce mites by breaking the mite's brood cycle. Mites only reproduce in the capped cell of pupae, and so by reducing the amount of brood that a hive is making, you reduce the mites. Now you only want to do this when the hive is nicely populated, sometime like maybe late July, certainly August, September, maybe into October. So I like to break the brood cycle of my queen 3 times, but I'm just going to show you this in a smaller nook box just because it's easy. I don't have to put a hat or a veil on. These boxes are pretty small. So what you want to do first, find your queen, and as you can see here, the queen is on this section here. Now what I use to do this is I'll use this item right here. This is actually a nice queen push-in cage. So all you got to do is find the queen. There she is. I'm just going to gently make sure the bees are out of the way, and then I'm going to push this down until it hits the wall or the rib of the plastic comb below it, plastic foundation. Now the neat thing about this is I've actually captured the queen in here, and see, all these bees can get out. There you can see them climbing out through this kind of the thickness of queen excluder material, but the queen can't make it out. She's still in there. So while she's in there, she can lay eggs here, but she can't lay eggs anywhere else. So this push-in queen cage, you know, we sell these really nice ones. It allows us to keep her in there for about 5 days, 7 days. And then that way, if you do the math, if you have her in there for 7 days and she lays 1,000 eggs a day, that's 7,000 eggs that aren't laid. There's 2 mites that develop on essentially every potential pupa. And so that would be 14,000 mites you're preventing over the course of a week. See if you can see her walking around in there. So you see, most of the bees have made it out, and the queen is still trapped in there. Okay, that's a good idea. Special bonus footage on how you can use these push-in queen cages to help reduce mites. Well, again, thank you for joining me on this beekeeping video. I hope it's been helpful for you to learn tricks on getting your bees through the winter. I do hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please give us a thumbs up. And also, check out our website, honeybeesonline.com. We have a lot of online classes. Particularly, we have an online class on getting your bees through the winter that goes into much more detail with things like vitellogenesis, stored protein and fat body reservoirs in honeybees with winter physiology. But hopefully this is enough to help you understand how important it is. Get your mite levels down. Use things like the push-in queen cage to break the brood cycle of those mites. Also, to recap, you got to be able to feed your bees proper protein and sugar water minerals in the fall in order to stimulate brood building of bees of winter physiology. And I gave you some explanations and examples on how to feed those bees both in the fall and in the winter, and how to wrap it up. All right. Thanks for joining me. Check out our website, honeybeesonline.com, and I'll see you next time.